Have you ever wondered if depression causes permanent brain damage? Stay tuned and find out. Hello, my name is Douglas Bloch. I'm an author and depression survivor. Welcome to your Depression Recovery channel, where each week we talk about practical tools and coping strategies for healing from depression and anxiety. The title of today's video is called, Does Depression Cause Permanent Brain Damage? Before we go into that, of course, we have to start with our humor. And, you know, today is, I think it's the 12th. Hey, it's a solar eclipse today. Wow. Anyway, it's also the 5th day of the Tour de France. And for those of you who follow it, British guy Chris Froome has won 3 years in a row. But this year he's getting challenged by a competitor who happened to be bipolar. And the reason he's going to give Chris a run for his money is because he's a rapid cycler. All right, time for the whatever we're doing. Yes, the talk. The other day I was coaching one of my long distance clients. He's overseas, and he'd been struggling from depression for about a year, and that's an awfully long time. So naturally he was quite discouraged. And at one point he said to me, "You know, I'm afraid I have permanent brain damage." I said, "What makes you say that?" He said, "Well, you know, I haven't been able to think or focus or concentrate for so long. I think my brain is permanently damaged." I thought for a moment and said, "Well, have you ever had a really bad cold?" He said, "Yeah, I've certainly had my share of them." I said, "What was that like?" He said, "Well, I couldn't breathe. I was stuffed up. I would sneeze. Sometimes I'd get a fever and chill. I had to, lie in bed, drink chicken noodle soup, whatever." I said, "Well, did you ever wonder if your body was permanently damaged by that cold, by that illness? Did you ever say to yourself, I have permanent respiratory damage?" He said, "No. I've had these things before. Within a couple of days or even weeks, I'm, out of it and back to my old self." Well, I said, "Well, why don't you think of depression as an illness, just like having a cold or a strep throat? Depression is an illness of the brain. The cold is an illness of the respiratory system, or the strep throat's an infection. But otherwise, there's no difference. They're both illnesses, and you can recover from each of them." Of course, the similarity between a sick brain and an acute illness is not so easy to see. We all know that the latter lasts only a short time. The immune system kind of takes care of things most of the time. You don't have to do a lot. Just sit back, chill out, have some warm chicken soup, and eventually it goes away. One of my group members recently had a really bad strep throat. I remember he was texting people, "Oh my God, I'm vomiting and I ache all over and I have this headache and I can hardly swallow." It sounded pretty bad. He came back to the group and I said, "Yeah, well, how was it? Were you bummed out?" He said, "Oh, no, I had a lot of YouTube videos and I had a lot of podcasts I wanted to catch up on, so it wasn't so bad." I said, "You weren't suicidal?" He said, "Why should I be? I knew it was going to be over in maybe 2 or 3 weeks max, so I just took the time to, go ahead and focus on some things I wanted to watch." As my group member told me, he knew that pretty soon he'd be up and at 'em, so it wasn't that big a deal. But with depression, with a depressive illness, there is no end in sight. And here's the important thing. The mental pain of depression is exponentially more painful than the symptoms of a flu. I'll never forget when I was in my depressive episode, I read something by the great novelist William Styron right before he went into the psych ward. He said, "I would rather have my arm cut off without anesthesia than going through the pain that I'm going through right now." That's how bad it was. So it is true, the pain is immense. It is true that it doesn't seem like there's an end in sight, but the same principle applies. If the body can heal, the brain can heal. Now, many people ask me, how can you be so sure of this? Well, I'll tell you how. 3 ways. One is I've been in the depressive episode really bad, not once, not twice, not 3, 4 times. And I write about this in my book, When Going Through Hell, Don't Stop. Remember, through hell? And I've come out of it. My cognitive functions completely restored. I was able to write again. I've seen a number of group members in 17 years. I've seen so many people have breakdowns, hospitalized, even suicide attempts, and now they're leading joyful lives. And thirdly, I've read a number of really good memoirs about this, like Darkness Visible by William Styron. One of my more recent favorites is called Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig, and I'd like to show you how it begins. So the introduction is titled, "This Book is Impossible." 13 years ago, I knew this couldn't happen. I was going to die, you see, or go mad. There was no way I would still be here. Sometimes I doubted I would even make the next 10 minutes. And the idea that I would be well enough and confident enough to write about it in this way would have been just far too much to believe. Well, he did write the book, and it became a bestseller, and he recovered his cognitive faculties, just like I did when I wrote the book When Going Through Hell Don't Stop. People told me I was going to write a memoir. No way, I said, and sure enough, I did. So you see, I told my client, people do recover. Your brain is not damaged. It's just been laid low by this sickness, and if you just let enough time pass, you will heal, and the brain will heal also. This has been Douglas Bloch. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you like it. If you did so, please give it a like. Or you can leave your comments in the comments section or email me, douglasbloch@gmail.com. If you want to take advantage of my long-distance mental health coaching service, you can look at the link on the screen and click there. Or I click there, put it in your web browser. And if you want to contribute to this channel, you can do so by clicking on the Patreon link. And if you click on my photo, in the closing credits, you'll be taken to the subscribe page, and you can do that. And until we meet again, I wish you the best in your mental health recovery. Thank you so much for watching.